Hi, everyone. This is the Purposeful Leader Series number 3. And I again have an amazing guest with me, very special to me and to my heart and my work. So I think I owe it to Chuck Blakeman, who's our guest today, a lot of things that I do because he put words into what I was trying to do at the time. And just a little quick story of how I got to meet Chuck is like I was online again, as I always am, on LinkedIn, and somebody must have posted his TEDx talk. And it was raving like about the talk. And I went there, and when I watched it, I was so excited. I had to go and find Chuck and give him a hug or something. Another part of me was saying, how come I didn't think about doing this talk myself? Like it was amazing to every word that he used and everything he said. And of course, I stalked him, I found him. And in a couple of years later, I think your TED talk was in 2014, Chuck, right? So then in a couple of years, I was at his Denver's office and met one of the most important people in my life right now because of him, and always followed him. And we're going to talk more about his books later. But before I just take it much longer to introduce him, I want you to do that, Chuck, for us, for our listeners. And just like a very short introduction would be just like he is the pioneer of really humanizing the workplace. And also he is the founder and CEO of Crankset Group. And at this point, I'm going to leave it to you, Chuck, to talk a little bit about how and when you started this amazing work that you do.
Oh, thanks so much, Brooke. It's great to be with you. Good to see you. It's been too long. Let's get back together. My microbes need your microbes, so let's definitely hug. Yeah, so I'm left-handed, ADHD, right brain dyslexic. I went to music school and went into the Army because I didn't think anybody else would hire me. So I had a very low self-image. My mother threw out, I couldn't tell this until she passed because it would have crushed her, but she told me growing up, you must be the dumbest kid alive. How dumb can you be? Well, it turns out I could be pretty dumb. I graduated at the bottom of my high school class. It turns out we raise ourselves to people's lowest expectation of us. And so that was my start. I went to the Army, and in the Army, I started a business. And I thought, well, this is interesting. Maybe I have something to contribute. And fast forward 40 plus years, I've built 13 businesses and 9 industries on 4 continents. And so apparently I do have something to contribute. And apparently being ADHD is an asset because 80+% of entrepreneurs have it. So it turns out I wasn't that dumb, but I certainly had a good honor, a privilege to get this far doing these things. And while I was building my own businesses, Brooke, because I didn't go to business school, and I grew up a rugged individualist because I was the last of 4 kids who was basically, you've seen the Home Alone movies. Well, my life was much more Home Alone than that. So I grew up a rugged individualist, a raging rugged, to the point where when someone asked me, who was the adult? Name the adult that was the most supportive of you as a child. I literally, Brooke, said, that's a thing? You mean people have supportive adults from their children? I thought we're just all on our own. That's what I was. And so that affected the way I went into business. When I went into business, I just would look at what my customer needs and I look at what I thought I could offer, and I would match those 2 things. Mm-hmm. And for 10 or 12 businesses, or 5 or 6 businesses, I would simply figure out what I'm good at. Was there anybody who needed that? And vice versa. Well, here's something people need. Am I good at that? Or can I provide that? And I would just do that. I never looked at what the competition did. It never dawned on me to look at I simply looked at what do people need and can I provide that? And that's how I lived my life. Well, the downside of that is you can do a lot of dumb stuff. If you haven't looked at what other people have done, you reproduce a lot of errors that other people would have saved you from. But the upside is that you end up being very disruptive, innovative, and you don't even know. You simply are just doing what needs to be done. And your world is not clouded with, well, nobody's ever done it that way before, or we've always done it this way before, or here's how you're supposed to do it. I just never had that stuff. So I built my businesses around what worked. I didn't know there was supposed to be a top-down pyramid scheme. I didn't know there was supposed to be a one-for-one regulation that looks like the military from the CEO back down to the bottom. We just did what worked. So I had one business that had 120 people in it. We didn't have business cards. We didn't have titles. We just did whatever, everybody we found what people were good at, and they did that. And then they got on teams, and the teams worked together. We just organically grew something that worked. And as I did that with my friends, as my friends saw these kinds of things and saw our success, they would say, "What are you doing? How are you doing this?" And so I looked at their business and said, "Well, yours looks different than mine." And so I would begin to teach them how to do this. And as soon as I started teaching other people how to do this, I realized I better find out if what I'm doing is okay, because maybe I'm leading them down a path that isn't really helpful. So I began to study history, the history of work and industrialization. And sure enough, I saw that the pyramid scheme that we use in business, what we call top-down imposed hierarchy, came from slavery. The first mention of management is in Hammurabi's code related to slavery. And it goes from slavery to serfdom to the organized military into the factories, out of the factories into today's business. And Google today is a 1903, nothing more than a 1903 factory system without conveyor belts. I've never seen a more 1906, 1903 factory system world than Google. It is not progressive in any way, shape, or form. That's the world we were taught to live in. So I just did what worked, and it turned out it looked very different than others. And then I had to study to make sure it was right. Sure enough, we're onto something, and off we go. So that was the genesis of my books on this subject.
Wow, that's kind of mind-blowing to me, because most people don't get there as naturally as you did. No. And I think you mentioned you didn't study business. Is that correct?
No. No.
Yeah. So do you think that was one of your biggest advantages?
It was.
Yeah, right?
It really was. Yeah, I tell people, please don't get an MBA. Just come pay me half of what you want for an MBA, and spend 2 years with me, and you'll come out with a lot better education.
And I love the way you say it. And I know you're so bold, and really, that's why I loved your TED Talk too, because it is to the point. And again, I'm sure it's surprising to some people who are listening to us now, sure, that you consider Google not to be as progressive as they seem, right? And most people do not really hear that a lot. So
Brooke, I work directly with their international organizational design team, the top 11 people in Google, who wanted to reorganize Google to get their mojo back. And it was a very short engagement, because we realized we were not a match, because I was telling them, you basically have to go an entirely different direction than you are. And oh, by the way, you have terrible culture. What do you mean we have terrible culture? We get every Friday to do whatever we want. We can wear blue jeans, and we have free lunches, and we have really high salaries. I said, no, that's not culture. That's perks. And the reason you have such great perks is because you have such terrible culture. And the only reason people stay are for the perks. And I said, basically, you have organized prostitution. Because people, what is prostitution? Doing for money what you would otherwise not do. Mm-hmm. These people would not be there if it wasn't for the perks and the money. It's not the culture. Their culture is horrible. They direct people's lives. They change people's career paths without them even knowing about it. It's one of the worst, most acidic cultures I've ever been around. But wow, we think perks are culture. No, they're not.
Yeah. And I can talk about just even this one subject for another hour, but I'll move. But I know you intrigue people already by what you said. So that really carries me to, this is called, because that's really my life is all about really digging deeper and deeper into why we're motivated. Because even in my own first job, looking around in a huge, big international company, I was looking, some people are very motivated while others are not. And then I saw some companies are doing great, some are not. So I was naturally curious to find out why. And of course, your books and your work has taught me a lot. And in your new book, which we're going to talk about really coming up soon, so don't miss this, people who are watching us, Rehumanizing the Workplace, by giving everybody's brain back, which is, I love that title alone. But before we move into that, you do say in your book, and quote Daniel's pink work, right? What motivates people? And it's definitely not the perks that you were talking about in Google. It's three things, and they're all intrinsic things, right? They want to have autonomy. They want to make their own decisions, which makes it back to your brain, give people their brain back. And then they want to have mastery. They want to be good. They want to grow and learn. And the third one is purpose, which is really kind of the essence of the series. But of course, it doesn't stay there. And I love all the other components that makes it a human workplace. But how do you think about purpose? What does that make you feel or do in the workplace?
Yeah, Brooke, it's so fundamental, and we'll get there. It'll take 20, 30, 40, 50 more years. All the studies basically continue to go back to the human element and how being human together makes work more productive, makes workplaces more productive, makes companies more easy to grow, higher profitability, all that good stuff. But purpose is at the very core of it. And it's the foundation of my that book, Rehumanizing the Workplace, by giving everybody their brain back. What is there's 6 reporters questions: who, what, when, where, and how, and why. Which one of those 6 is the one an animal will not ask? They'll ask, who am I going to eat? When am I going to eat it? Where am I going to eat it? What am I going to eat? How am I going to eat it? They don't ask why. Why is a uniquely human question. And it's the question that motivates us. The others don't motivate us. If you want to be a leader in a company, the best practice you can get into is every time you want to ask or have an answer to the other 5 questions, make sure you start the discussion with why. So attach why to the other 5 questions, because that's what's going to motivate people. That gets us at our core. Why do I exist? Why are we going to buy this copier? These are such fundamentally motivating questions to see, because they go to the result. That's why why is so enlightening to us, because it teaches us that who, what, when, where, and how is going to take us somewhere. Why? Because this is what will happen if we do, or this is how we'll be when we're done. And that's so motivating to see that. That's the visionary part of living life together. So vision and purpose to me are very interchangeable words. So to me, Brooke, to just lay the foundation, purpose is fundamental to work and to being a human being. And when we remove purpose from the workplace, we dehumanize it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like, just to repeat what you said, it comes to almost like what you were saying, called prostitution, because people come only to get a paycheck.
That's right.
And maybe keep them a little bit longer because there's a table tennis downstairs and maybe good food like I had in my job. Then that just can't do it for short term. But in the long term, I think it doesn't work, at least not now, because now we know a lot more about what purpose does to people too, really. So like, what do you like? And I'm going to go to your wonderful things, like some terms that you use that I want our listeners to know more about. But before that, what would be the recommendation that you have for leaders who want to keep the best talent in place or attract the best talent, be the employer of choice in the light of purpose? How do they like make that happen in the workplace, you think?
Yeah, well, it's not something you can do lightly. It has to be the core of everything you do. I say leaders have 3 responsibilities. Strategic leaders, we're all leaders, but tactical leaders have different. Strategic leaders, we all have this responsibility. Strategic leaders have it solely. 3 things. The first one is guard the values. And that's the values, the vision, the mission, purpose, all those why things, all those meaning things. The second one is champion the people. Figure out what they need and get that to them so they can be good at what they need. Resources, process, guidance, training, teamwork, get them what they need. And then the third one is pilot the results. So guard the values, champion the people, and pilot the results. If you're not getting the results you want, the first thing you should do is go up one step and say, well, have I championed the people correctly? If they're not getting the results I want, do they understand what they need to do? Did we come up with results together? Do we have the right processes? And if all that's in place, then you go up one more level and say, well, do we have the right culture? And you look at your purpose, and you're guarding the values that your number one job as a strategic person at DaVita here in Denver, there's a company called DaVita. They have, I don't know, 80,000, 70,000 people. Google has 80,000. This is a pretty big company. And they say they're basically a village. And I've talked to the high ups in that company, and they say our number one responsibility is to make sure we know what's going on in people's lives. And he gave the example of a woman who worked directly for him. He had about 10 or 15 people worked with him. And he said, there's this one woman I found out a week after her mother died, that her mother died. And he said, that is a failure of leadership. If she did not feel like she should come to me as one of those people who would know first, I have failed my job here at DaVita. That's guard the values. So that's where, we don't take this stuff lightly. And this is why I had crossed swords with so much of the HR human resources thing. That was a department created by lazy leaders who didn't want to be involved in the human side of business. The data kept saying, if you're nice to people and you treat them like adults, you'll make more money. But I don't have time for that. I'm too busy on the production side. So let's create a department of nicety, and we'll let those people be nice to people. It doesn't work that way. It's hypocrisy, and people smell it. So the first thing I have to do is have a really solid understanding of my purpose, my values, my vision, my mission, and then live them out every day in front of everybody. And if I don't, they're not going to do it. The old public speaking 101 course says, if you want your audience to bleed, you have to hemorrhage. Mm-hmm. So if you want your audience, the people who work with you to imbue your values, you have to just live them out every minute. You have to be breathing them and saying them and living them out.
So true. Oh my God, there were so many important nuggets there, but thank you. And thank you for really putting the bullets, the numbers there on what they need to do, because it really makes a big difference. And I don't want anybody to miss that you did say these are strategic leaders, but we're all leaders. And I know how much you believe in network systems, not hierarchies.
Right.
And we want people to feel that way, and that they do have the power, and they don't need to be empowered by others because they already have it. So
right.
Yes.
So let me give them, Brooke, if we can stop for a minute and give some people something very practical. I like to always give them real practical things. My third book, Rehumanizing the Workplace, is a workbook, how to build a company without hierarchy, without imposed hierarchy. And so one nugget here on keeping the culture alive, every meeting we have in our company, every single meeting, everyone starts the meeting with someone recites our values. Our values are abundance, community, clarity, connection, and trust. Those are our 5 values. Everybody in the company could instantly share those things with you. And if they can't, you have a problem with your culture. So we'd have someone share those. And then we ask this question. Can you share a story, a 15 or 20-second story about how you've seen one of those values lived out since we met last, whether it's been a week or a month? And then we say, what's our vision? And somebody recites that. Can you share one story about how you've seen that lived out? And not at work, doesn't have to be at work, anywhere in your life. And the same with our vision. So values, vision, and mission, we have those all 3 shared, and we ask the same question. It takes about 5 minutes. And what does that do to any production meeting or any strategic meeting? Where the tone it sets is, this is why we're here. This is what's really important. The axle of the truck broke. Yeah, we got to fix that. But there's a reason why we need a truck fixed. It's because of these purpose-driven things. So that's just one practical way that a leader can keep these things alive without them having to pound the drum all themselves.
Yeah, very true. And that's exactly what I'm finding out in some companies that I'm working with. And when you ask people, they want to make sure that they can see the examples and it's brought front and center, so that they know how the leaders are living that, the strategic leaders, executives are living that, and they want to see the commitment behind it. So, and as you know really well, so many companies come up with these statements, the values and the mission, and it's just right there on frames, but nobody can recite it or say it out loud. So a great
example that would be Enron. And people remember Enron, they kind of started to crash in 2007.
Yes.
And they're a very large company. A year before they crashed because of unethical behavior. The year before they crashed, they put out a culture manual, culture booklet, 64 pages. And the essence of the booklet was that we base everything we do on honesty and integrity. and they gave it to every single employee across the world. It meant nothing. So yeah, this is not about having a really cool statement. This is about living out what you believe. We say this all the time. You don't build culture. You simply live out what you believe. And that is your culture.
Yes. And that's why I love the type of work and which I have embraced in my own too, that like you ask leaders, what do they believe, right? Everything starts with their belief system.
Yeah.
What do they believe about their people, organizations working together? I mean, unless you are like authentic about that, people smell it, like you said. So yeah, amazing points that you made. And I'm sure our listeners love that too. So let's get to your book, because I was going to say the same thing. And thanks for saying that out loud too. Like when I read your book, first of all, let me start with this one, which I love, right? So now look at the title. I love the titles. Why employees are always a bad idea. You just like grab it if you have no idea what it's about. Really? And then it became, of course, one of the top 10 business books in the year that it was published. And I'm saying like, of course. And that's why I learned, first of all, for our listeners, I learned a lot about the history of work because of this book too, and your TED Talk. But of course, this goes into detail. And what I love about your books, and this last one, again, let's say the name, and I'm going to put the links below when we are finished with the recording, but Rehumanizing the Workplace by Giving Everybody Their Brain Back. How did you choose the title? Let's start with that.
Actually, very carefully. You know, people think I'm kind of whimsical about these titles, but we words matter, as you said. So we take time coming up with these things. Interestingly enough, rehumanizing is not a word. Dehumanizing is a word. You can dehumanize according to the dictionary. You cannot rehumanize. Hello, this is a problem. So we felt like that was really important because we have dehumanized work. The factory system, most of the problems we have at work today, you can trace them back to where, long before the factory system, but it was the factory system where all these things were canonized as if they were the way you're supposed to do work. So the factory system taught us that work does not have to be humanized. And my mother taught me that. You don't go to work to make friends. You go to work to get your work done and make your money. And you go home and you make friends there. It's just, put up with it, bear through it. And I don't think that's true. I don't think work should be an unwelcome interruption in an otherwise great day. So there should be no separation. It should be an integrated part of my life. I love being at home. I love being at work. I do two different things, but they're integrated. And I'm human at home and I'm human at work. I don't change. And so that rehumanizing the workplace really became important just because that is the fundamental problem with work. Gallup says every month they do a survey, what percentage of people at work are engaged? And you see this survey, somewhere between 29 and 32% of people every month for the last 15 years are engaged. 2 out of 3 are phoning it in. They're just barely coming to work, just putting in the hours so they can go home. If you had a machine that was 30% effective, what would you do? You can't just replace it because they're expensive. First, you take it apart, put it back together, oil it, hug it. You do whatever you could to make it work. And if you couldn't, then you finally replace it. What do we do with people? Well, what are you going to do? Everybody's got 30% engagement. It's just a thing, Well, no, it's not. You and I both know companies that have 100% engagement with thousands of people. Yeah. It's not like 3 people. You can be small, you can be big. It doesn't matter. So rehumanizing the workplace became the key thing. And how do we do that? Well, the only way to do that is to give people back their humanity. And the way we do that is by giving them their brains back, which is, kind of a cutesy way of saying we get everybody involved in making decisions. We no longer have a privileged few who make decisions for the rest of us, because that is called codependence. Mm-hmm. Management, by definition, the definition of codependence is this: doing for others what they could or should do for themselves. Management is nothing more and nothing less than pure unadulterated codependence. We find that here's an adult who made the decision to buy a house, get married, have a career path, have kids, these gigantic decisions in life. And as they cross the threshold into work on Monday morning, they check their brain at the door because they don't have the ability to make good decisions. We just make that assumption coming out of the factory system. They can't make good decisions. Well, we found, again, thousands of companies who have decided maybe that's not the way to do this. What if we required that person to bring their whole humanity to work, the whole messy, creative individual? So you've got to bring your brain, your heart, everything with you. You can't check anything at the door. And people buck this. You know this, Brooke. After 150 years of factory system, people say, hey, I'm kind of comfortable having a manager. I don't want to make decisions. I like I'll be an adult at home. I have too much adulting to do at home. I don't want to adult at work. Don't make me make decisions. So it's a perfect system because we've got on one end people saying, I like making decisions for other people. And the other people say, well, that's good because I really don't want to make decisions. You make all the decisions. I'll be a human doing instead of a human being while I'm at work. So rehumanizing the workplace is the fundamental principle involved there is what we call distributed decision making. Mm-hmm. Distributing the decision making amongst everybody so that the guy pushing the broom is involved in and essentially makes the decision on what broom he pushes and how he pushes it, not by himself, but in collaboration with the team and the strategic. And so it's not an anarchy thing at all. It's much more about something. It's just collaborative decision making. It flattens the structure in the sense that we make decisions where they have to be carried out. And if we did that more in life, we'd find out how much better life works.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you and I, like you said, we know those companies already exist and for years to come, and in every size, shape, and format in every part of the world too. Yeah. So people feel like you said, it's going to be a whole big chaos, but yeah, they never tried it yet. And it again comes back to what their belief system says or their conformity with what was going on for 150 years. And I liked one of these phrases that you always use, which is not used so commonly. So can you tell us what you mean by participation age?
Yeah. So for us, I got that term. I was looking for some way to identify a positive way to look at where we're at in this new age. Because every age we've ever named, think about how we've named them. The Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Information Age, all these ages are named after things.
Yeah.
And maybe even a process, the Service Age, or, why don't we think about people? Mm-hmm. Is there a people age? And we were accepting an award, our branding company, back in 2006, we're out at Sun Microsystems in California with at a big conference they're putting on internally for themselves. And they had all their partners there. And our little company won the company I was selling into won the Marketing Partner of the Year award. And at that big conference, there was a guy from Wired magazine who talked about the participation age. And he said the participation age is one thing. Participation. It's about people sharing about participating in building a great company. And I saw presidential candidates that year and the year after talking about Hillary Clinton and others. We're talking about the participation age. And it really rung for me because it was named after people, and it really gave a succinct understanding of where I think the world is going. I think it's two things. Participation has two elements to it. The participation has two hallmarks. Hallmark number one, people want to build a great company, not for you, but with you. Mm-hmm. They want to participate in building that great company. And then the hallmark number two is they want to share in the rewards of having done so. So capitalism is receiving value for adding value. And the more value I add, the more value I want to receive. So I don't want to make a bunch of money for the people at the top of the pyramid scheme. That's why we call it that. Why are pyramid schemes illegal in America? Because the people at the top use the people at the bottom for the benefit of the people at the top. Welcome to corporate America. It's a pyramid scheme. So what if we invited everybody to benefit? So that's the deal. Let's create an environment where people build great companies together and they all share in the rewards. And the companies that do that, we know, you and I both know, the data shows emphatically they grow faster, they grow stronger, they have higher profits, more profitability, higher productivity, and best of all, they have the highest retention of people of anybody in the world. Wegmans groceries, in the grocery industry, it's like 36% of people leave every year, 1 out of 3. Wegmans for decades, 3%. 1/10 of that. Imagine what that does for your productivity, your training, everything. So that's participation. That's a company. And they prove it. They put bag boys and clerks on airplanes to take them to the next city to ask them one question. Here's 3 or 4 sites we've picked. Where would you put our next Wegmans? They're asking bag boys. That's participation.
That's so true. That's so true. And I know that like your book has so many good practices and questions and give very practical items to really take on and action items. So hopefully people who listen to you will grab that. And before I let you go, one last question I have for you is like, what do you see happening because of the pandemic in terms of what you're seeing, rehumanizing work? What do you observe?
Well, a decade ago, I said, as we figure out that people don't need to be herded into daycare, corporate daycare centers and supervised like babies, as we begin to figure that out, we won't need these giant, arrogant, ego-driven buildings with our names on them. And this stuff will begin to fade away. Well, COVID has greatly accelerated that. It was funny listening to CEOs of big fancy companies 6 or 8 months into this saying, man, I don't know how this is working. This can't possibly work, but these people are working from home and we're actually doing okay. And so it's really accelerated that. And my 3rd book, Rehumanizing the Workplace, came out. We actually finished it before the pandemic started. It came out in February this year, but we probably should have named it the go-to book for work at home, because the 12 practices in that book will teach you how to build a company where it doesn't matter where people are. They can be in an office, they can be at their home. It doesn't matter, because we're all in this together and we have 100% engagement, and the distributed decision-making makes this work seamlessly. So what we're doing, it turns out what you and I are doing and others are doing is so prescient. It's so important for where we're going as a global society. And it's just going to get more fun.
Yeah, and thank you. And I'm more hopeful because this kind of forced to see what was already broken down, right? And it just made it more vivid and clear for everyone. So hopefully we take our lessons this time. And like you and your books and your work, a lot of people that I'm talking on this series have a lot of great answers to make that happen. And all of you are evidence that it can happen with your own company and the people that you also mention in your book. So first of all, thank you for being here with me. I can talk to you for hours and weeks to come. Hopefully, we're going to meet in person soon too. But thanks for the books and all the knowledge and the wisdom that you share, and taking us away from that conventional wisdom, which is not working anymore. I always say work as we know it does not work anymore. And I think all of us use that sentence in one way or another. And you show the way. So why not take that, right? So thank you so much, Chuck, for being with me. I appreciate the time that you spent with us all.
It's a delight, Brooke. We'll look forward to seeing you again, and we'll give hugs when we're there.
Yes, we will. Thank you so much, Chuck. Thank you.